This is a book that got published in 2005. It was a very, very significant moment for me because I had dreamt of writing, then I dreamt of getting the book published. And there were like 100 things that happened before it hit the shelf. And more importantly, when it got published, it didn't even look like this. Actually, it got published with a different publisher at that point of time. And I'm going to try and see if I can locate a photograph of that because I think I don't have that copy anymore. So if you do have that one, you're holding on to a masterpiece. But this is, I just think that I got really lucky with this book because it got a lot of encouragement from the readers. So I'm just going to read out a couple of things. Like, for example, at when you look at the back cover, it says it's a quirky read about a confused MBA waylaid by love and life. 3 years of college, and Abby has no answer to the question, what next? Luckily for him, fate, that chancy thing, lands him in an MBA course at a top notch B school, the Management Institute of Jamshedpur. At Management Institute of Jamshedpur, or MIJ, Abby finds his life turned upside down. What with professors like Hati and Chatto, and friends like Rascal Rusty and Pappu, and gorgeous girls like Aisha and Kea. Will the 2 years of being at MIJ bag Abby a job? Will this be where he finds love? Question. Mediocre but Arrogant is the story of being young in India. And I think that's really the essence of this book. It's about the roller coaster that is hostel life, bad grades, chai at the dhaba, old monk, thumbs up on special occasions, and not least, being in love. Read on to know why MBA spells mediocre but arrogant. The Week actually put a quote. It said, loaded with humor and narrated at a cracking pace. And the Deccan Herald said, the authenticity of the dialogues, friends, incidents, fattas, attitudes are the book's heart. Well, so what I want to do is to actually tell you a little bit about this book. And I'm going to try and sort of start by sharing a couple of different things. One is, it begins with this little scribble from Abby's notebook. The story is set in 1983, the scribble. It is called the MIJ Song, and that's one of the scribbles which is there. The chorus is, the 2 years I spent at MIJ studying for my MBA, precious hours spent with pals, drinking the night away. Those term papers we had to write, every professor had a strange quirk. It looked, it took Rusty time to figure out for each prof what would work. Some liked quotes, some liked graphs, some like humor in papers just for laughs. Chorus, the 2 years I spent at MIJ studying. Dadu's dhaba was our usual haunt, whether for chai and cigarettes we would want. When Arunesh sung Dylan's songs, with his shiny guitar he would flaunt, with his shiny Yamaha guitar he would flaunt it. This is scratched out, so it says this song is dedicated to the QT class, without which, and then somebody scratched that out and said don't be mean. And there's a cat drawn and all that stuff, very typical of what my notebook used to look like. So this is one of those scribbles you will see. um, But this is really what the story is all about. This was first published in 2005 by Indialog, and subsequently HarperCollins, which had, earlier rejected this book. Yes, every single aspirational publisher that I wanted this book to be published by, they had all said no to it, and that's where I was. Um, so I'm going to read out the first portion, and I'm going to stop in between and sort of share some anecdotes as they get triggered. It's about the time that I spent at XLRI, which, the only thing in common, I guess, is that both happen to be in Jamshedpur and both happen to be B schools. So, Management Institute of Jamshedpur is the story of Abby. Um, Well, the behind the scenes portion, which is there, it says ever since Mediocre But Arrogant got published, the question I've been asked most often is how much of this is autobiographical? Well, there are some similarities I do share with Abby. I lived in the railway colony at SP Marg, studied economics at SRCC. I did my MBA at XLRI Jamshedpur while Abby went to an MBA at the Management Institute of Jamshedpur, MIJ. So we are same, but different, as they say in some parts of the world, or maybe different, but same. Mediocre but arrogant is really a story of growing up in India, and anyone who has lived in a college hostel will recognize the characters in this book. Gopher, who sucks up to every prof and generally annoys the hell out of his classmates. Actually, I must say that, when I saw Three Idiots for the first time, I kind of thought that Gopher shared so many similarities with, Chatur of Three Idiots. Arunesh, the guitarist who plays songs of Dylan, the crazy roommate Pappu, who sleeps more than anyone I know, the enigmatic rascal Rusty, who has the most ingenious solution to life's problems. These characters live on in every college even today. To survive the terrible food in the students' mess, there is Dadu's Dhaba, where you are more likely to find the students than you would find in Professor Chatto's class. Chatto teaches the incomprehensible quantitative techniques that has been the nemesis of many a student and for generations of students. This is also the place where Abby discovered Aisha and Kia, and he has a sneaky feeling that back home in Delhi, his friend from college, Priya, loves him. That's so not on. Then again, isn't this what your college days were like? So, this book is all about that. I want to say thanks to many people who helped me as I chased my dreams of writing my first novel, Nandini for being the first one to critique my ideas, my children for patiently letting me pretend that I knew what it meant to be a father, to my parents who taught me the basics of writing, and to my in laws who bought the first copy of this book. Thanks, Madhukar and Geeta, for helping me make sense of the chaos over numerous cups of chai, and to the professors and friends from XLRA Jamshedpur for all the good times. Thanks to Basant Pandey of Indialog for bringing out the first edition of the novel and giving me a break as an author. To Kirti Ramchandra, who edited the first version of this book. HarperCollins, thank you for bringing out the latest edition of my debut novel, Mediocre But Arrogant. The second novel, Married But Available, it continues from where this novel ends. Thank you, Kartika, for editing both the novels that have changed what MBA stands for. So, this is really what the book was all about. I'm going to read this out and tell me if you like it. I would love to continue to read out more of the portions, but chances are that you've read this entire thing yourself, and this is not going to be very different, in which case you can tell me so. Let me read a couple of pages today. Chapter 1. I do not know why I landed in corporate India. Nobody in my family had ever ventured there, and they were doing fine. That it was a combination of serendipity and stupidity is what I think this was all about. Why I chose to do human resource development is another mystery. In fact, I did not even start off in human resources. When I joined MIJ, Management Institute of Jamshedpur, Bihar, in the summer of 82, the course I had enrolled in was called Industrial Relations and Social Welfare. At that time, there was only welfare officers, and that term really sucked. So some smart cookie, must be like Rascal Rusty, decided to tweak the formula, change the packaging, and made a new commercial with a babe in the skimpier bikini, as the marketing guys did with all their soap and toothpaste brands every year. They called it a relaunch. And that is how the new and improved version of the Personal Management and Industrial Relations PM and IR course, positively Neanderthal, came to be called human resources, and those who graduated from the institute were christened HR professionals instead of the previous personnel managers. After struggling through 2 years at MIJ and eventually completing the course in PM and IR, I was let loose on the corporate sector. In the course of time, I was anointed the head honcho of HR at a reputable firm, all because of the stamp that MIJ had put on me, or as they say in management jargon, because I bore the MIJ brand.
In the good old days, cattle owners used to brand their cattle by using a red hot metal marked with their own name or initials or symbols in marketing terms. They were called logos. Slowly, some such marks or brandings began to get associated with superior quality of cattle, and so customers looking for those brands when they were buying livestock, they would start looking for those brands. And that is how the term brand came to represent a particular standard, a quality, a method by which your products and services can be differentiated from those of your competitors, because life is all about brands. For the next class, please come back with a 1,000 word write up on the brand I want to be. Describe the brand you currently are and the one you want to be in 2 years. The focus of your write up should be on the marketing strategy you will use to become that brand. Do not waste time copying your answers from some marketing journal in the library. I have read them all and will be able to instantly identify the plagiarized portions in your paper. If that happens, your assignment will not be graded. I want you to be creative and so on and so forth. Thus spake Professor Suri, head of marketing at MIJ. His knowledge and sarcasm were both legendary, and he was right. It was indeed all about brands. How else do you describe the transformation of scores of university graduates into much sought after brands in the corporate bazaar? Now, I want to actually pause and really give you a little bit of a context. The story is set in 1982. This is, for all of you who were not born at that point of time. Then this is really the time when there were no cell phones. The computers had not happened, and yes, it is true that we had professors who had, at least that's the belief we had. They had a read journal, which was there in the library. So if they say that, I've read them all and will be able to instantly identify the plagiarized portions in your paper, so do not waste time copying your answers from some marketing journal in the library. They were probably right, but there was nothing called Google. There was certainly no chatbots, and therefore life was much tougher. As you can imagine, that if you had to plagiarize anything, it just took an enormous amount of effort. So sometimes, in a strange way, it forced you to be honest, because it was much faster to write rubbish on your own and get graded for honesty rather than to write something exceptional and instantly the professor would know you couldn't be that smart. So it was that element which I think I want to talk about. So this is the time and era. Life is very simple, and if I were to periodically compare my life with the life of Abby, the protagonist in this book, you will notice, because I can talk very authentically about that time in 1982, and those are some of the things. So, thus spake Professor Suri, head of marketing at MIJ. His knowledge and sarcasm were both legendary, and he was right. It was indeed all about brands. How else would you describe the transformation of scores of university graduates into much sought after brands in the corporate bazaar, given the number of applicants every year? It seemed as if the branding machine at MIJ worked overtime. Though the earliest batches of MIJ students must have found it difficult to give themselves a distinct identity. You can imagine that conversation. So tell me, what would you logically want to call the students of MIJ? MIGians? I mean, that sounds like who we are trying to copy. IITians. Be creative there. How about magicians? That would be a stretch. This is not a term paper, buddy. Give us real options. What do you want the students to be called? I mean, students of MIJ would be what? Midgets, or worse still, mediocre? Bad pun. Ah, this would all have become a big time branding issue had it not been resolved by Brainy Bala, one of our brilliant super seniors. He came up with the term MIJite, which immediately earned the seal of approval at the students' general body meeting. Even Professor Suri approved of it, and that became our brand. In future, we would all be collectively known as MIJites. Despite its unglamorous name, MIJ had an impressive campus, a fancy library, and a state of the art auditorium where we held our annual one act play festival. In the administrative block was the dean's office, the classrooms, and above them, a large chapel. Next to it, believe it or not, was the girls' hostel, making it the butt of innumerable jokes. Hostel was a generous word. The girls' dwelling was not much more than a biggish hall with a few wooden desks and beds arranged along the walls. In fact, back in those days in 1982, all the buildings of MIJ were rather uh, utilitarian. I couldn't think of a polite term. They did not have the distinctive style that is necessary for an institution to be taken seriously by the world at large. The way you dress creates a first impression on those who hold the keys to all the goodies in life. And MIJ certainly didn't look like it met people's expectations of what a major business school should look like, nor did it have the necessary spark that creates a major brand. Well, this is what the story begins like. And it was fun writing it, also because I could sort of really think about a number of instances and, all the characters that were there. Some of them were inspired by real life, but uh, there were a lot of composite characters, which means you took the characteristics of one person in real life and maybe a second and a third and fourth and created a character which is a composite character. So most of the characters here are composite characters, and with the exception of a couple of others. So this is what the thing is. Let me know what you think of it, and if you like it, we will continue. So look forward to your comments. Bye bye.